Hello, welcome to Prolix Comics Bollix. I am Slum King Millionaire, and he is.
The Harlem Bomber.
Isn't the Harem Bomber?
Well, it depends on which L or which R you want to adopt.
Harlem Bomber.
It's been transliterated both ways, as so many things are.
Right. Yes, that famous Harlem Renaissance.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, so of course, for those in the know, will have already twigged, and of course the title.
Yeah, that'll help. Yeah.
We are going back to the first Prolix Comic Bollix was Cutie Honey.
Yes.
Go Nagai. So we're returning to Go Nagai with Violence King. Right, so let's establish exactly what we're talking about. Well, I'll tell you what I'm talking about, and I suspect you might have read further than me. So once again, as when we talked about something else, which I can't remember what it was now, we're in the area of scanlations, right? Unofficial scanlations.
What we read before that was scanlated was that outrageously violent samurai comic that kind
That's right.
Endless duel to the death thing.
Shigurui, I think.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're in, well, kind of similar territory to a certain. So yeah, surprisingly, I'd assumed that Violence Jack, because of the popularity of the anime version, which we'll get to as well, I'd have assumed that this must have at least appeared in partial translation at some point over the years, but never has, which is kind of surprising.
There's the man himself.
So what have you got there? What's that?
That's I think I brought this out last time. This is my son, Go Nagai art book that was gifted to me while I was in Japan by somebody, and so yes, those are some large.
Sad to say as well, since we last spoke of Go Nagai, the big earthquake at the beginning of the year, hit his hometown, right, Ishikawa, which had a Go Nagai museum, which was totaled in the quake, unfortunately.
That sucks.
Because I never had a chance to visit the. I mean, don't get me wrong. I am aware there are bigger problems in an earthquake than me not getting to go to the Go Nagai Museum. I do have some perspective, but I would like to have visited.
I also would have liked to have gone. I think I did when I was out in Osaka. I went to the Tezuka one, which was a really interesting experience. Just terrifying to see the sheer amount of pages the man had produced, and I would imagine Go Nagai would be the same kind of a deal.
Yeah, well, it's interesting as well because we did Cutie Honey, we did this, and some other bits and pieces that we talked about for other things. I'm kind of getting a little bit into the area of Go Nagai Completist, I think, because there is something fascinating about we've talked about obsessions. Yeah, we've talked about this before when we talked about things as diverse as Jess Franco or The Fall or something like that. You kind of need it all.
Yes.
To kind of, there's no such thing as a best of. You have to.
I would like somebody to publish and translate. Yeah, all of it. I want to read all of Gorilla High School. I want to read all of Harenchi Gakuen. I want to read all that crazy shit.
Yes. The thing is, though, so that brings us around to the scanlation thing. So someone has, I found somewhere, fell off the back of a lorry, the Go Nagai scanlation project, right, which is far from complete, but there is quite a bit of his stuff out there beyond what obviously. So properly licensed and legally, you have the we talked before. There's Devilman, obviously. What else is there that's out there? I mean, not a whole lot more, right?
No.
Unfortunately.
No.
Unsurprisingly. And like I said, I would have assumed, someone like Viz or someone would have put out, I don't know, like one or two violence acts and then it didn't sell, or, I would have thought someone would have attempted, but I'm kind of surprised that no one has, because it is, and again, we'll get to this, it is slightly more high profile, maybe even more so outside of Japan because of the anime, right?
Yes.
Became a
Well,
fan favorite.
I'm sure we talked about this before, so I won't belabor the point.
Why not? We usually do.
Oh shit, yeah, maybe I will. So I would have mentioned before that Go Nagai is a guy who has a really there's a visceral and strong reaction to his work from a lot of anime nerds or anime fans or whatever of a certain generation. And it's really like it's one or the other. Either people absolutely fucking loved the trash he brought to the table in the 90s, or they were like, this is exactly what everyone thinks this is, you know, like it's just basically sex and violence and swearing and has no actual redeeming qualities whatsoever, right? And you know, if you go back to the 70s, there's almost the same reaction to like, you know, serious animation fans in the 70s were all fans, and manga fans were all fans. Like people outside of Japan were all fans of Matsumoto Leiji. They were like, oh, Captain Harlock and Galaxy Express 999 and all of this, which is it's all great. I love all that stuff. But they were like, oh, and that awful, you know, kind of kiddie, stupid robots punching each other stuff. That's you know, Mazinger Z, you know, UFO Robo, Grendizer, Getter Robo. You know, there was he did quite a lot of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
A Devilman that was huge in Italy.
Right.
Italians loved that stuff because it was just raw and fucking awesome and just like, yeah, rock'em sock'em robot shit. And then in France, they were all smoking their cigarettes and, you know, talking about Matsumoto Leiji being a genius. And hence, eventually Daft Punk hire him to like make their music videos, right? They didn't hire Go Nagai.
Right.
They were, oh, Violence Jack. That's what that Daft Punk. Too bad there's not a Daft Punk album based on Violence Jack with, you know, anyway. So yeah.
Aphex Twin or someone would be more likely to hire.
Yes, exactly. But if you go back and read like even like old web boards from that time, from the 90s, you know, all you have is complaints about like particularly things like Violence Jack, which apparently did get, well, the anime, the original video animations got banned in like tons of countries, and it was it was perfect stuff for the scare tactics for the people who are trying to say this shit is bad for your kids.
Yeah,
like,
we'll get
they would show you 5 minutes of Evil Town, and you were like, it does seem like it's probably bad for kids.
We'll get to the anime a little bit later on because it is a big part of this story in terms of international fandom, and particularly in the UK, it became and in the US as well to a certain extent, it became, you know, I think of people of our age, there's probably a small demographic more likely to have heard of Violence Jack than on either side of it.
Yes.
Not so much, maybe.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, so what I'm talking about, because the whole thing hasn't been even scanlated yet, as far as I know. So what I'm talking about is, so it originally ran from 1973 to 1978, right?
Yeah.
Weekly and then monthly Shonen magazine. I don't know if the monthly was just reprint of the weekly, or I don't know, but it was in both. And then I guess would have been Violent Jack 2 was 1983 to 1990 in weekly magazine Go Nagai or something like that. And then there's some intermittent, it returns for short runs in different magazines, and also there's like some novels as well, right?
Yes, and then there's a Shin, as always, there's a Shin Violence Jack, which is kind of a
which has actually been scanlated as well, but I deliberately did because I knew that was a bridge too far for this particular chat. But what I managed to, because the other thing that's confusing as well is not only has it not officially been translated, but the scanlations are working off of obviously the collected Japanese tankobon volumes, of which there are many collections over the years of varying length, and I don't know if that means that some have just compiled it in a different way, So it's more volume. It's actually quite. I thought it would be reasonably straightforward to figure out how much violence Jack is, but it's
I don't think
complicated. Including even in Japanese, apparently there would be these occasional one-off stories that would appear here and there, right? Which apparently have never been collected in tankobon form.
Interesting.
And I know later on we mentioned Devilman.
Yeah.
There's a crossover.
Yes.
Right. And I get that far. And I'm not sure, is that in the first kind of run of Violence Jack?
No.
Okay.
But the first one about the seventh, like this. So you, okay. Well, I guess in a minute we'll talk about where you got to.
Well, I'll tell you exactly where. What I'm talking about is because they have these arcs, right? They all have titles, and in English, Destruction of Tokyo, Slums of Kanto, Hell's Wind, Mondo's Fierce Battle, the Dragon Fortress, El Dorado, and then halfway through the Hell Towns of Kanto, which is the 5th volume going by whatever collection has been scanlated. So did you read, I get the feeling you read a little bit further than that, did you?
I feel like I've read more than that.
Yes.
Because like well, I guess did you read so you've seen Evil Town, right?
Yeah, well, so
did you read up to the point at which that stuff started appearing in like the underground?
Yes, that's Hell Towns of Kanto. That's
yes, okay.
And it's only half of it has been translated in the scan list.
Yes, so no, so I think we may have read exactly the same amount. And then they skipped forward because somebody has done the very last, like just the very last 100 pages or so of the entire thing.
Are we then into Shin Violence Jack territory, or you're talking the end?
No, I'm talking about the very end of this run with like
I haven't read.
The connective tissue to Devilman all starts to kind of come out.
How dare you steal my phrase? But yes, but so someone's gone out their way to just
do the last chunk because it's going to take so long for them, I guess, to fill in the middle. They know people just wanted to.
Okay,
skip to the end.
Send that my way then, if you will. So is that the only? So basically, apart from that end bit, so far it has only got to halfway through volume 5 in scanning form, as far as you know.
Let me just open up. I mean, just for those at home, if you simply search Violence Jack manga, it's a pretty good chance you're going to find it very quickly on various different websites that host this stuff. And
Bellafabacavallori.com.
That's the one, yes.
A digital lorry.
And here, okay, I'm just going to open up chapter.
This is blistering YouTube viewing.
Yes.
So I'll continue. I'll talk a little bit about.
Basically, so we got to Hell Towns of Kanto. Then there's the Gale Dragon parts 1 and 2. The Sumo Devils. Did you read the one about the sumo wrestlers?
No.
Okay, Sumo Wrestlers of Kanto. That's another couple. Sumo King of the Brutes. That's like a crazy. That one's one of the most mental ones in terms of like what it's asking you to believe about what could happen within a year or two.
So these have been translated.
These have been translated, yeah, and then
these must be from an earlier scanlation project. Maybe.
Possibly, yes.
Yeah.
And then it skips a huge amount because it goes from what it calls volume 7 to volume 18.
Yes, that's right. I think it's 18 volumes.
Yeah, volume 18, chapter 64. Chapter 63 and chapter 64, which are the final arcs.
Well, I'm only halfway through Hell Towns of Kanto, so please send me everything.
I'll send you a link. I'll just send you the link to.
Okay, yeah, right. Okay, yeah. Don't do this at home, kids. They're naughty.
Nope. But yes, but you have read most of what's being scanlated. There's still maybe another 500-600 pages probably.
Yeah. What's interesting, you say as if there's some other stuff that sounds, because I felt in my reading that towards the end it started to tail off a little bit in terms of overall kind of quality, or just as often happens with Go Nagai, he kind of has this explosion of creativity and then he seems to like get a little bit bored of his own creation, and he'll put it down, and then he'll return to it again.
Yes.
Or the crossover, Cutie Honey meets Violet Jack, or he's big on crossovers and cross fertilization, right? Which seems to actually, in his case, seems to benefit him greatly because it gets him all excited all over again.
Yes, yeah. And so, I mean, I'll say that for me, the part of this I enjoyed the most is the 70s run. And for me, it's very clear to my eye when that stops and when the 80s run starts. And this is true of any of the other Go Nagai stuff I've read, where there are sections that span the two decades. So like a few years back when he republished Devilman in like tankobon form, most of it's the original 70s run of Devilman, but then there's this interstitial like volume that he wrote at some point in the 80s or 90s with the time traveling adventures of Devilman and Ryo.
Okay.
And it's awful. It's all, the writing is awful, but more importantly, the art is like stiffer and kind of less, just like there's something really solid and chunky looking about the older art.
Right.
And then it gets a little too noodly and fiddly, and it's like,
these are technical terms, folks.
Yeah, and so I think like, and actually like you can forgive some of the technical deficiencies and some of the like issues with proportion when the drawing itself is just rougher and more rough and ready and fucking awesome looking. And then when it starts looking a bit more polished, but it looks wrong because the proportions aren't right. And like, I think he probably had a big team at that point too. He had like the Dynamic Productions team.
Right.
And whatever they're doing, the alchemy that they're doing and that stuff. So I don't like the look of any of that stuff really after. There's one arc, and you could tell it's the end of the original arc, where his arm gets hacked off. And the last scene is him holding it between his teeth and like walking off into the sunset with his own arm in his mouth. And then we jump into the kind of these various Evil Town things, right? The sex content goes way up.
Well, so I don't want to
after the
about
70s.
it too much, but it seems like I want to pinpoint this because I think we might be. I'm not saying you probably know better than me, but I'm confused. So I assume the 18 volumes we're talking about, that's just the 73 to 78 Violence Jack.
No.
So you're saying the 18 volumes.
You and I have read this. You and I have read all the stuff that was done in the 70s. And we've read some of the
73 to 78. Where does that end? Are you saying that ends maybe after Hell's Wind?
Yes. Let me just. I'll my drop down. Yeah, I would say. Let me open up El Dorado, City of Gold, and see.
That was the least interesting one for me. But again, I assumed that was towards the tail end of the 70s run, as opposed to the 80s. So 8390 is what's considered Violence Jack 2, right?
Yes. So yeah, I think El Dorado, City of Gold is the last segment, and then as soon as we get into the Hell Towns, I'm pretty sure that's all 80s.
Because it can't be later than 86 because the anime would have come out then, and the anime is clearly based on.
Oh yes, yeah.
Town.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely. I'm 100% positive that Hell Towns of Kanto is where we jump from the 70s to the 80s. The art looks significantly different, and they basically re-established the setting at the beginning there as well, reminding you of that there's been this.
Yeah, well, they also
we want to explain at some point what the fuck this is all about.
They change. I don't know if this is a mistake in the translation or in the original, but it changes the timing of the Hell Quake from the 70s to the 80s.
Well, yes, because I think they've just like.
Right, so that might be the cutoff point between Violence Jack 1 and 2 then is. Yeah, somewhere between Hell, after Hell's Wind and El Dorado, somewhere around. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
We did our research well, didn't we? Anyway,
I think I don't know. To me, it's really clear because the art style fundamentally and radically changes, I think.
Right. No, you are right. Anyway, so yeah, so violence. So at least in the original incarnation, it's the 70s. It's 1950X, right? It's a near future, and absolutely fucking earthquake to end all earthquakes. And now I realize now I see, because you've read this before, haven't you?
I did.
Now I realize why you panicked.
And started arranging knives.
Yes, 2011, where everyone else kind of got about their business and you were freaking out. It's because you read Violence, Jack.
This is true. It doesn't paint a very pretty picture of life in Tokyo after a hellquake.
You thought the Kanto plane was going to turn into hell on Earth, right?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, so it's true what what's his name, Frederick Wortham says. They're bad for comics. You shouldn't.
Stay away, kids. Stay away.
Bad for, well,
especially from Violence.
He would have had a heart attack if he'd read Violence Jack.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I do like the fact that whatever else you want to say about, Go Nagai, he knows what kids want.
Man, yeah. Oh yeah.
And he gives it to them in space, and he makes and he doesn't care about having a socially redeeming, it's just like, no, I know what kids want. They want balls to the wall, crazy. And he did it in his cartoons. He did it I mean, he went as far as you could go on TV in the 70s, really.
I'm guessing not a member of the PTA Association. I don't think they would have had him.
No, I'm pretty sure actually Harenchi Gakuen had him like nearly.
Yeah, I'm thinking at a certain point, at a certain time, and Go Nagai might have been a similar. The name might have worked in the same way as the phrase "video nasty."
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think in Japan for sure.
So anyway, there's this massive hellquake, and due to a
beautifully and incredibly illustrated over and over again. So the opening like chapters, because they keep coming back, because they'll introduce a new character who are kind of our eyes for this chunk of the story,
right?
But they'll always go back to like, what were they doing in the earthquake, and then you'll get another 10 pages of fucking bridges collapsing and like buildings falling on shit and trains
exploding. It's not just that, there's tsunamis, there's volcanoes explode, and then gas mains open up, things catch fire, and natural gas. Yeah, it's a fucking.
Some of which did actually happen during the 2011 hellquake, right? I remember Kawasaki being on fire.
But we're still here. I think that's the main point. That
you and I are, yes.
Yes. Well, quite a few other people as well.
A few
I
others.
look out the window.
Right. It's not just all on fire and
no.
Gigantic people in armor punching each other.
Man walking around.
But again, another thing, because I don't want to forget this, that I think is important, is this predates Fist of the North Star.
Right.
And this also predates Mad Max.
Yes, that is a
Violence Jack predates Mad Max.
I think if watching the anime version, you would have assumed that it was the other way around. And to a certain extent, obviously, those films did inform the anime as well. But this was written well before, right?
And the 70s run definitely has lots of things that, like, lots of Lord Humongous type of characters and stuff. I would be very surprised if it wasn't actually a direct influence on.
Well, I was wondering about that. I'm wondering if we're missing a trick, and it's something that they're both
from the 60s,
like what, Damnation Alley or something like that.
Those things were around for sure.
The thing is, I'm not sure what are the chances that the people who made Mad Max would have read Violence Jack in English.
It's hard to know, but it's just that I have been surprised.
Because you still can't read it in English, like prop.
Right. Oh, sure. But I'm always surprised by what people who are in the arts seem to be aware of before.
I guess. But I would be more likely to put it down to something else that they're both referring to, or just there's something in the water, or sometimes these things do happen, right?
Hellquakes and
no. What's the phrase? There's a phrase, something along the lines of genius stands hand in hand around the world, and one shot goes all the way around, or something.
Right.
That was very badly paraphrased, but something to do with morphic resonance, right?
Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, so we're in this post-apocalyptic world where there's basically our main character to begin with is this spoilt kid called Ryu, right? Who's I love.
Oh God,
the beginnings of him. He's just like he's the most spoilt kid in the world, with like 2 or 3 older hot sisters who just
voting sisters, yes,
just look after him the whole time, and just literally
completely incapable,
almost literally peeling grapes and putting it in. And he gets away with it because apparently he's so adorable and cute. But he's forced to man up when his entire family dies in the quake, and he ends up kind of
his sister's the one who she literally holds him down on the ground while pelting chunks of volcano land on her back. Right.
Yes, and she catches fire. Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, shameless heartstring pulling and gratuitous suffering. You know, for our pleasure, and you know, to amp up everything emotionally, which is a very Nagai Go thing to do. And he ends up basically leading this kind of gang of orphans in the mist. And so they encounter this mythical kind of, I don't know what you'd call him, like he's described as being half wolf, half gorilla, this kind of entity of a man, this wall of a guy called he's the titular Violence Jack, right? Who over the course of what I read, either way, I mean, you never quite understand what he wants or what he needs, but he seems slowly, as the comics get slightly more. I mean, it's a weird, like, you'll have, you know, just fucking heads split open, tits, more heads split open, gratuitous fires, and then a bit of a preachy message about how we should all get along. And it's like, what the fuck, Go Nagai? You cheeky cunt.
You maniac.
Yeah. Your head's in the shed, as they would say. So yeah, there seems to be.
I love all that stuff. I love that, and I also love that he will occasionally, especially that 70s run, he'll occasionally work in characters from his other comics. Like he'll have straight up comedy characters. It's like he's
and they're drawn differently as well. They're drawn more cartoonishly, aren't they?
Yes. And you're like, and he's put them in his Tokyo hellscape. Like, oh yeah, that's what will be going on if this had happened. All those other characters I'm running. So it's surprised we didn't see Cutie Honey and the rest.
It's weird. It's like if you were suddenly, you know, Donald Duck turned up to get reamed by a tentacle monster in the middle of Oji or something. It's but he owns all his stuff, right? So he can
he can do what he wants.
But yeah, so it seems as if he does slowly. He becomes a kind of slightly weird moral compass in a way. Like in some bizarre way, he's fighting for the underdog,
humanity. Yeah, he seems like he's an element. It's like an elemental force almost. Yeah. Right. And you know, at the beginning, he seems to be a force just for violence and chaos. Right. But then there does seem to be, as you said, as time goes by, he does start to. There seems to be some method or something, but not always. Sometimes people do just get. I like that about the animations as well. Is that sometimes it's like sometimes you just get killed if you happen to be anywhere near him.
There's a little bit of Sonny Chiba's Terry Sarugi from Street Fighter as well. Like that whole if you have to fight dirty kind of thing. Real proper anti-hero stuff, right? Like But at the same time that, you know, given equal force on it, because you know you need a Violence Jack, because also in this world is the Slum King. And now this is a fucking awesome. So basically the Slum King, who's always in clad in this kind of like samurai style armor, right? And the reason behind this, apparently, I don't know quite how this happened, but Slum King, has so much muscle on his body that it's in danger of crushing his own internal organs.
Yes.
So he's forced to wear this kind of armor that's so heavy that his muscles are constantly like working out, right?
Yeah.
To keep him
From crushing himself.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's like I'm pretty sure this doesn't actually make any medical sense at all.
And then, did you read as far as then when we discover that also maybe all the skin has gone off of his face as well?
Yes,
like,
yeah. He's just got a face made of pure muscle,
pure muscle
under his mask, which is brilliant. It's just a fantastic notion. And then, of course, you know, it's not quite pervy enough. So, and this is one of my favorite touches: is the Slum King has a couple of pets, right? These
yes.
A couple of naked women who've had their arms and legs cut off.
One of them's not a woman.
Oh no!
One of them is Rio. They're both from Devilman. It's Mickey.
See, I didn't know. I'm not as I've read Devilman through like once and seen the anime, but you've seen it like a million times. So
yeah, no. So it's Mickey. It's Mickey, Devilman's Akira Fudo's girlfriend.
Okay.
And Rio, who is the one. Major spoilers here if you haven't read Devilman.
Right. Turns out to be androgynous, though.
Yes, it's true. He is androgynous. Yes.
I fucking both.
Yes, well, sure, they're both cute, but yes,
and even with stumps, it's
please turn. Yeah, I mean that's a grim image for the 70s because that stuff comes out like that. The human dogs are in the story from the very beginning.
What's interesting as well is it's grim, but it's grim, but it's not just me and you being weird. It is clearly designed to be sexual as well, right? And then later on, you see a lot of that stuff in proper when hentai manga comes along and goes proper dark and fucked up. You know, that's imagery you see in that stuff, like when their arms and legs removed, so they just become like fuck toys. You know, and little of violence.
Somebody got sued famously for not doing that movie, right? Boxing Helena.
Yes, it was Kim Basinger.
Right. Yeah.
Kim Basinger, fucking Boxing Helena's Disney compared to Violence Jack.
Well, I know, but like, yeah. I mean, it was a shocking idea then, and that was way after Go Nagai put it in what may be a children's comic. I mean, like, where did it run? It ran in
Shonen magazine.
Right. Yeah. So basically,
well, you know, all young teenage boys need something to, you know, this is not, you know, it's like Hotspur or Victor.
Exactly.
Yes. Running Violence Jack next to Royal Rovers. But yeah, so
you're right. Slum King is a great villain for sure, and Violence Jack is a great anti-hero. And is it, you know, but it's also he's used wisely. Like he's not constantly on the page. Like large sections of the story, he almost comes in, and in that way, it reminded me too of this idea that's been later on attached to Mad Max by George Miller, where he says, "Oh, the movies don't have to have continuity because they're a series of like oral folk tales in this post-apocalyptic world where people are just sitting around campfires and telling stories of the time that Max came out of the desert and like did this or that." And there's an element of that in the Violence Jack stories too, of just they are
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, sometimes they are very much sidelined because there's all these other gangs like the heretics, and they have these wars and what I like as well is because it's also batshit and what I like is there's certain entire lapses of logic which they're not just slight lapses of logic, they're just so far out there that you go with it. Like, so you gotta have this post-apocalyptic world, right? Like everything's fucking destroyed, and you've got like slight Wild West like towns coming out of the
all within 2 years apparently of the thing coming down as well.
But still, I get that you got these little shanty towns, whatever. However, in one of these shanty towns, there's Restaurant King, a fucking high-end establishment with waiters in tuxedos, and apparently a clientele that can support it. It's like this makes no sense whatsoever. But it doesn't matter because Nagai Go just needed a scene where they go into a high-end establishment restaurant and eat all the food and don't pay for it, and
Yes.
and I'm just, that's brilliant. That's like real nerve. That's like, I don't give a fuck.
Fuck. Yes. Also, don't forget that in the first Helltowns run, there is there's the sections that, so basically this is a whole like undercity that's like a big chunk of Tokyo is literally fallen down underneath the
It's
city itself.
Ikebukuro as well, isn't it? It's a
Ikebukuro, yeah.
Evo department stores.
Yeah, it's just a chunk underground, kind of like it in like beneath Planet of the Apes, basically, right?
Right.
And down there, these like 3 warring factions have
probably an influence, I would have thought.
I would imagine on this section, yes. And then there's these 3 warring factions, one of whom is made up of gigantic mutant biker punks. One is made up of a bunch of like middle management civil servant type of guys. And then the supermodels.
Yes, a tribe of supermodels. So what the fuck? Once again, you cheeky cunt, guy. It does suppose worth bringing up certain things like yes, the Hell's Wind section with the
yes,
biker, which
biker
is very, very Mad Max indeed. And
way before.
Huh?
But way before, like that.
Oh yeah. And with more gore and nudity and SM stuff, and that stuff, and it's just like
it's Charlize Theron's character from like Fury Road, like
such a heady brew. It's such a heady brew. And so let's talk about the anime. I didn't have a chance to watch the anime again this time. Did you? I've seen it before.
I watched the first one. I watched it in proper release order. Because they were released in America, they were released in a different order than they were in Japan.
Yeah, so from what I remember, so it's interesting. Violence Jack was one of those titles in that 90s boom when everyone started being interested in all things manga and anime. Violence Jack was one of those things that had that notoriety, like La Blue Girl and Urusa Godoji and all that stuff, right? But like I said, they were released in the wrong order and stuff, and in some places just outright banned or burned. But in the correct release order, though, it's interesting. I think that one that's the boring one, isn't it? That's the one.
Yes, the one that's the most. Yeah, because it's mid '80s. They couldn't quite go as, but it's violent.
But the other two follow pretty soon after, right? I mean, well, the 86, 87, 88. They're not spread out that far. The OVA.
Okay, maybe I thought they were a little bit later, but anyway,
you might be right. I'd have to look it up. There's a thought. Looking things up.
Right.
So the first one is kind of the one that has most original stuff, not in the comics.
Yes.
Exactly. That's kind of a mix of the earthquake. Up the story.
Something is introduced.
Yeah, but there's a lot of stuff that isn't in the comics, right?
Whoever the Harem Bomber or Harlem Bomber is not a character I remember from the comics.
No, and then I remember that being the least interesting one. Oh, here we go. The OVAs were released 86, 88, and 90.
Okay, right.
So maybe I guess. 88.
So there's a pretty big jump. I mean, that's interesting. It's only 2 years, but there's a massive jump in because Evil Town, which is the second one, right?
Well, that's the classic one, I think.
That's got stuff that is like the one version I watched seemed to have like almost like undigitally fogged.
Yeah, well, that's the one with the hermaphrodite character, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So Evil Town is what is basically the Helltowns of Kanto.
Yeah.
And then the third one is the third one is, I think the way I reckon you should actually do it, watch 1, 3, 2, because it escalates. Because what happens is the first one's quite boring. The second one is fucking mental.
Yeah.
It's the creme of just fucking insane. All that stuff that they said about anime in the 90s, that it was coming to corrupt your children. It's
true of this.
It's true. Yeah.
Yes.
It will turn your child into a psychopath. Guaranteed.
Yeah. They will be accountable.
I will start growing. They will like Videodrome.
Yeah.
And then the third one is also a lot of fun, but it's a bit of a toning down.
Right.
And the thing is, each one's only 14 minutes or something, right? So it's worth watching the whole thing. But if you want it to escalate nicely, I would go 1, 3, 2.
And the order you watch them in makes no difference anyway. In terms of like, it's not like there's a continuing narrative. Each one is a capsule story.
No.
Yeah. And I will say I watched them in English this time because I couldn't find. The English dub is quite fun because it's really
very sweary.
Very sweary, and whoever dubs Violence Jack is actually, it's somebody who's, I just looked him up because he's an actor, like, as well as a.
Yes, it's Sir John Gielgud.
It was, yes, surprisingly. No, it's just somebody I was like, oh, that's funny. That was, they had an actual actor do that, who'd been in stuff in the 50s and 60s. But anyways, he's good, you know.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, that's definitely worth a look as well. And these comics are just, I mean, it's manna really for us. But
yes.
So let's just, as a thought experiment, let's try and think outside of ourselves for a minute. Just a bit. I mean, who are we recommending Violent Jack, and who are we recommending Violent Jack for? Yeah, take it away.
I don't know that Violence Jack should be recommended. All I can say is personally, I thoroughly and hugely and massively.
This was my first time reading it, and I'd seen the anime, like I said, but this
is my third time.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Reading the entire run, yes. I can see me doing and I've also read all of Devilman Lady, which is also quite bonkers as well, and is written around the same time as that, as the craziest sections of Violence Jack. So where I think the art takes a bit of a dip, but the crazy takes quite a sweep up, right, in the 80s. Yeah, he was everything.
I'm all in. I'm all in for some Nagai Go, and it's interesting because the thing is, I was very familiar with Nagai Go through other media adaptations of his work, for instance, the anime and the films and stuff. But I think you do have to go to the source to really get a Jones for Nagai Go. So, for instance, Keiko Kamen, right?
Yeah.
The Keiko Kamen movies and the manga. The anime, sorry, they don't quite, but I would imagine the Keiko Kamen manga, which has been scanlated, might be. So, I don't know if you've ever read that.
No, I haven't. No, but
and of course, Cutie Honey. I mean, the Cutie and the anime was great as well. That was one of the rare examples where I think they got Nagai Go. They captured it really well, even though it deviated from the comic. The old manga series really kind of.
I do like a lot of the very first set of things based on this. Like I as much as I appreciate and enjoy the 80s, grittier Devilman adaptations, which are beautifully animated, I think I actually prefer the kids' TV show, right? Because it is so. Because I mean, the comic is its own thing. It's almost like the same setup, and then they go in completely different directions, right? But they're both totally satisfying in their own right. Right. And Get a Robo, Mazinger Z. In fact, a lot of that stuff, when I've gone back to, I don't know why, it just works for me as like a fully grown adult who hasn't had a brain injury for some reason. 18 minutes of Go Nagai fucking big things punching each other is just, it's Prozac or something. It's completely comfortable for me.
No, I foresee in my future going further down the well, I think, as much as is possible.
I'm happy to join you on that quest. Do we need another friggin' podcast?
Yes.
Yeah, the spin-off of Literary Spec,
just go Nagai, go.
go Nagai, go. There we go.
I suppose I'm in a good position here. At least, even if I can't get stuff, I can pick up stuff easily here. I would have thought, in its raw.
Oh yeah, in its
yeah. Although exactly. I wonder, actually, once you really get into it, I'm wondering that there probably are some, Holy Grail Nagai Go rarities that people are always on the lookout for in thrift shops and eBay and stuff like that. But like I said, I haven't. It's funny. You think you know something, and then when you really focus in on it and you realize, actually, I know shit about Go Nagai, really. I mean, if you're talking tips of icebergs, I know he recycled a lot of stuff, but still, I mean, the iceberg of Nagai, we have only really talked about.
Well, so I mean,
bit.
like Mao Dante is interesting to read because it's the dry run for Devilman, and like it has a lot of the same themes and stuff, but he clearly ultimately gives up on it at a certain point. He's just like, I don't like this, isn't quite working, and then he just goes back to the drawing board and comes up with Devilman.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I'm very keen now as well to read, now that I've experienced it a number of times, this thing of seeing the media adaptation first, not being quite, and then going back to the source. And I would quite like to read, because I watched the anime version and it was okay, but I would quite like to read Shuten Doji. That looks kind of interesting.
I don't think I know which is.
Shuten Doji it's based on that old Mount Oe. Is it Mount Oe legend of the monster who lives on the mountain? There's like an old there's an old fuck, blanking on his name. Wakayama Tomisaburo's brother.
Oh, Katsushintaro.
Yeah, there's an old Katsushintaro, like from the early 60s or late 50s Shuten Doji movie. It's like, yeah, it's like a one of these old legends. Yeah.
But I mean, just like, I mean, I can't even do it justice, but like, even just to flip through this book and to see the number of different comics and like stories that he did, like, I'm just like, what the hell's this? Like, who's that character and what's that?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny as well. Like, I watched the series, the movie series based on Haranshi Gakuen.
Right.
Kind of not that great, but kind of interesting. And then I was thinking, oh yeah, well, here we go. I'll read the getting the lubricant ready for the comic, and then it's all drawn in this really cartoonish. I'm thinking, I'm not gonna not going out to this.
Yes.
I didn't expect that. And then there's the even earlier in that similar cell is the Abashiri. Kazoku series, which they made into a movie, like, because they keep making, it's a mountain of stuff that I'm kind of, I don't know, sometimes something just comes, the timing's right, and for whatever reason I'm ready to burrow into the Go Nagai mountain. I think this year
there was a reason why I did not shy away from coming back to this when you were like, because I wasn't like, no, I've read that before. I was like, I'm quite happy to every 3 or 4 years read Violence Jack, front to back. And as I said a bit later on, if we do all of Devilman Lady, which is a lot of that, and it's all been scanlated and it's all available. And I'm interested to see what I haven't read as well. I'm going to go back maybe to what you described, this Go Nagai project, and see what else is.
Yeah, and well, I mean, hopefully I'm quite happy to pay for it as well. Let's hope some of the stuff gets properly released and bound, and I'd like to be able to pick these things up in my hand and take a look at them properly. Okay, there we go. I think we've gushed enough.
Yep.
Who knows? We might return to Go Nagai. He might become the patron saint of Prolix Comics Bollix.
He might. He's easy to talk about because his shit is fun and crazy.
Yeah. Okie doke. Until next time then.